Hey guys, it's Nicole here from Bake Toujours, and today we are making adorable mini pecan pie macarons. I have had multiple versions of this same design over the years, but this is my favorite because it's not going to compromise on taste. I've used royal icing decor in the past, and a little bit is great, but it was like the whole top of the macaron was covered in royal icing, which isn't my favorite on an already super sweet shell. So in this case, we're gonna be using my same technique that we use for rosettes, where you under macaronage the batter just to make that pie crust scalloped edge, which is super fun. And then you don't have to decorate each shell after it's baked. It's gonna be done once they're all piped. Let's get started on how to make these mini pecan pie macarons. So let's get started on the pecan caramel filling first so it can set up in the fridge while we make our macarons. If you've never tried my salted caramel recipe, this is the same recipe, but we're adding pecans into it. If you're in need of more in-depth information, you can click on the link above to the original recipe. Let's run through the recipe. You're gonna take 150 grams of sugar and put it into a stainless steel sauce pot. Then add 52 grams of water. On medium-low heat, you're gonna dissolve your sugar. Once your sugar is about 80% dissolved, you can turn up your heat to medium-high heat to get your sugar syrup boiling, and you're gonna cook this until it becomes a nice amber color. This will take about 10 minutes. While you're cooking your sugar syrup to that nice amber color, let's prepare our other ingredients. You're gonna want 103 grams of heavy whipping cream, and you're going to need to warm that up. About 30 seconds in the microwave should do it for this size batch. If you use cold cream to deglaze your caramel, it's gonna seize up and make a mess. So you wanna make sure your cream is warmed. And you're also gonna prepare 150 grams of unsalted butter. I prefer European style butter, has more fat, but any butter will work. And then just make sure you have some good vanilla extract or vanilla bean paste next to your pot, and we're gonna add that at the very end so we don't lose any of the taste. Once your caramel is a nice deep amber color, we're ready to deglaze with our heavy whipping cream. So you're gonna turn off heat, pour in your cream, and then whisk. And be careful because you'll get a nice facial. It's very hot and steamy. Whisk until your cream is incorporated, and then add in your butter. Turn back on heat to come to a boil and whisk for about 1 minute more just to get everything incorporated and to cook off a little more moisture. Once everything has been cooked off for another minute, you want to pour into a bowl with an ice bath so your caramel will stop cooking immediately and not burn. And it also gets your caramel to a better temperature where bacteria doesn't fester. Once you have your caramel safe in your ice bath cooling, you can add a nice pinch of salt to balance out the flavors and a teaspoon of vanilla extract or vanilla paste. Now that your caramel is done, we can refrigerate that and let it cool while we make our macarons. So to make our French macarons, we are going to take my base recipe, but doing 80% batch. So I'm using 80 grams of egg whites, 72 grams of sugar, 2 grams of egg white powder, and then 104 grams of both almond flour and confectioner sugar. If you're new to making macarons and need a full in-depth tutorial, then you can click the link above to check out my Macaron 101 video. Otherwise, let's get going on our meringue. We're gonna whip up those 80 grams of egg whites until they're nice and foamy. And then we'll sprinkle in our sugar, which also has our egg white powder mixed in with it. Once your sugar is dissolved, you can add your colorant if you're using powdered colors. Here I am using True Brown from the Sugar Art. If you're in need for more colors, these are great for macarons because they don't add any excess moisture into your macarons, which can cause issues like ruffled feet and fragile tops. That's why I love using these powdered colors, and I like to add my powdered colors in at this stage so that the color is saturated and there's no streaks in my meringue. If you're in the market for new colorants, you can use Bake Toujours to save 15% off on your next purchase of the Sugar Art products. Once you've added your color, we can turn up our mixer to medium speed to really start developing air into our meringue. You're gonna whisk about 2 minutes on medium speed, and then once you've developed some nice structure in your meringue, you can turn it up to medium high and let it go until you reach stiff peaks. Once you're at a nice stiff peak, this is where we're gonna start adding in our dry ingredients. You wanna be careful when you're adding your dry ingredients because you don't want to deflate too much of your meringue at this point. So slowly incorporate your dries, and then once your dries are all in, you can start macaronaging, which is the process of deflating the air to the perfect consistency so your macarons develop beautiful feet and they're not lopsided and everything like that. But if you remember in the beginning, I said we're gonna under macaronage some. So here I'm gonna be taking out a little bit of that batter and separating it. I'm gonna make it a little bit more smooth and tumble it and macaronage a tiny bit. And then I'm gonna stop short of the perfect consistency for macarons. I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but this way it's gonna hold its shape better. So when we make that scalloped edge on top of our macaron shell, it will hold shape and be raised up a bit and add that fun texture onto our macaron. So once you've got your smooth yet thick batter for the piping crust, I'm gonna set it aside really quickly and finish on my main batter to macaronage to the proper consistency for macarons. So here I'm pushing out the air and tumbling my batter until we're at a nice flowing consistency. Once I'm at that perfect stage, it's time to put this batter into its piping bag fitted with a piping tip. This is 10mm piping tip. And for that pie scalloped crust, we're gonna be using a Wilton 101 piping tip. Once you have all of your batter in your piping bags, you're ready to pipe. So I have a silicone mat here with an air bake tray so I do not have to rest my macarons, which is great. And I get to piping. Now, here's a note. For those who live in a super dry environment, it's best to do one row at a time for piping and then adding the decorations before your shells dry out. So here, I am not so concerned about the dryness, and I piped all of my regular 3/4 inch shells, and then I'm going around with my Wilton tip to make that scalloped pie edge on all my shells. Once you've piped your scalloped edges, then you can add some pulverized pecan onto the middle, and this just gives it an extra texture as well as makes it look like the filling of your pie. And I also added one bigger piece of pecan in the center. In order for that pecan dust to stick to your shell, just like sprinkles, you want your shell to still be wet and not dry. So that's why if you're in a dry environment, you might want to do one row at a time with this design. Once you've piped your shells, put on the scallop top, dusted them with some pulverized pecans, you're ready to put them in the oven, directly in the oven if you have an air bake tray. If you don't have an air bake tray, then I suggest waiting till your macarons are completely dry. And if you are having to rest your macarons, make sure they are really dry before putting them in, or else you can get cracking where your undermixed batter touches your shell. When you're ready to bake, bake at 300 Fahrenheit for 18 to 20 minutes. Let them cool completely as well before you try to take them off your baking surface. Once your macarons are cooling, let's get started on our pie crumble element. For your pie crumble, it's gonna be super simple. Just make your favorite pie pastry recipe and then crumble it up on a sheet tray, bake it, and you've got pie crumbs. So here for me, I used 100 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 gram of salt, and 4 grams of sugar, and mix that up in a small bowl. And then I cut in my butter. I'm using 70 grams of butter here, unsalted, and I prefer your European style butter. Once you get all of that butter immersed in your flour and it's like sand almost, like little pebbles, then you're ready to add in your liquid. So here we're adding about 20 grams of water, 1 to 3 tablespoons until your dough comes together in a nice ball. It's still gonna be a little shaggy, that's okay. And usually I would chill my pie dough before I'm rolling out because you want all that gluten to get hydrated, and it's just best your butter stays cold that way too and it gets flaky. But here we're just gonna crumble it up so it doesn't need to be chilled. This is a super small recipe and I'm still not using the entire dough, and I'm only using about 70 grams here, and I'm putting it on my sheet tray. Just make it into chunks. You don't want them too big or else they'll take longer to bake. And then throw them in the oven. I preheated my oven at 350 Fahrenheit and then bake for about 8 to 10 minutes, depending on the size of your chunks and if you refrigerated your dough before or not. Your timing might be a little bit different. You just want the dough to have a little bit of a golden feel to it so that it's not gonna be soggy and lose a nice crunch when you're adding your crumble into your macaron. So once you have that nice golden brown look to your crumbles, take it out of the oven and let it cool as well. Now hopefully your caramel is set up. You can take it out of your fridge. You're just gonna take 100 grams of your caramel and add 30 grams of pecans. So I add some pulverized pecans, about half is pulverized and half are chunks of pecans, just for different textures. And you mix that into your caramel. Once that's nice and mixed in, you can pipe on your caramel to your shells. Sprinkle or dip that caramel into pie crust, and then sandwich your cookies together. If the pie crust crumbles are so big, it can be really difficult to sandwich. So make sure both your pecan and your pie crust aren't too big of crumbles. So then your sandwiching of your macarons is a little easier. But you can always add a little more caramel on the top of your second shell to make sure your sandwich stays put. Once you've sandwiched all your macarons together, put these in an airtight container and let them mature for 24 hours in your refrigerator. Once your macarons are matured, it's time to enjoy. You take them out of the refrigerator, set them on your table maybe for Thanksgiving. I don't know, they're a great centerpiece, but they are ready to be enjoyed and they are absolutely delicious. The pecans make it so rich. It's just so delicious. These macarons are so tasty and they are the perfect dessert after a super large meal. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and if you have any questions about the recipe, please comment below and I'll get back to you. Have a wonderful holiday season. Goodbye. Enjoy.